This one goes out to Jill. She requested it. Check out her channel. Oh, hey, it's Jill. And for you, graphing absolute value. For graphing absolute value, I'm going to show you how to graph both of these on the same graph so that you can really see what's going on. So I'll have both of those that I showed you on this same graph right here. Let me talk a little bit about what this will look like first. What this is y equals the absolute value. That's what these kind of two bars right here mean, of just x. So what will happen is no matter what values I pick for x, no matter what, it will come out positive. And that's the essence of what it means to be absolute value. So I can pick, say, negative 25 for x, but the absolute value, when I place that negative 25 in here, it will come out of the absolute value as a positive 25. And if you chose a number that was already positive, say, 12, put 12 in for x, the absolute value of a positive number is just 12, or that same positive number. So I'm going to graph this. I'll graph y equals the absolute value of x minus 3 on the same graph. To do this, the trick to graphing absolute value is to first of all know that the basic graph, this one right here, it looks like this. So whatever your graph is going to do for the absolute value will be some variation of this right here. So when I finally graph this one on the graph below, you're going to see it will look like this. Even this one will take this shape right here. This minus 3 is just going to adjust it just a little bit. And I'll show you how to do that. Simplest way that you could probably break down a graph, especially if you get confused, is to plot points. So the only trick you have to remember since you're graphing an absolute value is make sure that you choose some negative points so that you can see what this graph is really doing. All right, so we'll make this simple. Let's plug in, we'll do a chart here of values. Let's plug in 0 for x and see what I get. When I plug in 0 for x, I get the absolute value of 0, which is 0. So I get 0 for y. Now, once I get these points here, I can transfer them directly here. This is now a coordinate. These will be all my coordinates that I can go ahead and plot. So 0, 0 is right at the origin right there. Okay, so now that I have that first one, I can do a couple more. Make sure to include some negative values so that we can see. So let's go ahead and do that. Negative value, let's go say negative 1. Okay, when I put a negative 1 in here, that's y is the absolute value of negative 1. What is the absolute value of negative 1? Positive 1. Whatever goes in here has to come out positive. And that's it. This is now a coordinate I can plot on my graph. Negative 1, up 1. So there's the next point for this absolute value graph. And I can do this as many times as I need to. Well, let's pick a positive number and see what I get. Say positive 1. Well, when I put a positive 1 in here for the absolute value, it becomes the absolute value of positive 1, which is just positive 1. So that's another point that I could plot. So right here, positive 1 and another positive 1 puts me right there. Okay, so I think you could probably get the idea of this for now. I'll do negative 2 as a point so that you can see. When I put in negative 2 here in my little chart, I'm doing the absolute value of negative 2, which is positive 2. And when I plot that point, that's going to be negative 1, negative 2, and up 2. And I'm also going to have this same corresponding point over here. I'll have over 2 and up 2. So this graph right here, y is the absolute value of x, is done. All I have to do is trace in all of these points. So I draw in these points, and I have the graph of y equals the absolute value of x. that is the graph, the basic graph of the absolute value of x. As you can see down here, none of these values of y go negative. That's why I drew my axes like this, because I knew I wasn't going to be having any values at all down here. Once it like hits 0, it doesn't keep going. It bounces back up, and all the y values don't get smaller than 0. Okay, let's talk about the next one on the same exact graph. How is this one going to be different? Well, the graph of y equals the absolute value of x minus 3 is almost identical to this right here. The only difference is this minus 3. So, a couple of tricks with this. If you see something inside the absolute value, like this minus 3 is inside the absolute value, the way that you handle that is you say, okay, well, if this is inside the absolute value, bars, which it is, then it's just going to take my normal graph of y equals absolute value of x and shift it. In this case, it's going to be to the right. Yes, to the right. And it's going to move the entire graph to the right 3 units. Now, I know you might be thinking, well, it's negative. Why would it move right? That's just kind of one of the rules for absolute value when you're doing the graphs. If you have a negative inside of your absolute value, it's going to shift it to the right. So if this were a plus 3, we would be shifting the graph to the left 3 units. But it's not. It's a minus 3, so that means we have to pick up this entire graph and just move it over 1, 2, 3 units. And that's it. If you didn't know that trick right here, you could always resort to your table of values and you will get the exact same graph. So either way you want to do that is completely up to you. What I'm going to do is just move all of the points that I found here. These are all the points that I found when I did the original graph of y equals the absolute value of x. And I'm just going to do what I said and shift them all to the right 3 units. That's it. And I'll be done. So when I take this and shift it to the right 3 units, it's going to be 1, 2, 3. I'm going to move this one to the right 3 units, and it's going to be 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to do these for all the points. 1, 2, 3. Including these over here. 1, 2, 3. And last one, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I have just shifted all of the points that I used for my original graph right 3 units. That was the shift I did because it was inside the absolute value bars. In another video, I'll show you what to do when you have numbers that are outside the absolute value. But essentially, this problem is done. All I have to do is draw in the lines. And I did that kind of bad on this one. I apologize. Figures, my drawing skills, not too good. But that's it. So this is now the graph of y equals the absolute value of x minus 3. That's all you have to do for those problems that look like this. Just take your whole graph that you found and shift it. Because it was minus, you're going to shift to the right. If it were plus, we would have been shifting to the left, but it wasn't. Hope this helps. Thank you for watching.